Hi, and welcome to our anthropology panel. My name is Melissa. I'm the Widening Participation Coordinator at the University of Exeter. Before we begin, I would like to introduce our fantastic anthropology panel. First of all, our academic speaker, Julian.
Hello everyone, I'm Julien Lignol. I'm a senior lecturer in anthropology at the University of Exeter, and I mostly focus on human-animal interactions.
Thank you. Our undergraduate speaker, Kyra.
Hello, I'm Kyra. I'm in my third year, so I've just started my dissertation and I do BA Anthropology.
Thank you. Our PhD speaker, William.
Hi everyone, I'm William. I'm a PhD student researching Britain's chili culture.
Amazing. And finally, our alumni speaker, Lauren.
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren. I studied BA Anthropology at the University of Exeter from 2014 to 2017, and since graduating, I've been working in the charity sector.
Amazing. Thank you all for joining us today. So to begin, I have a question for all of our panelists to get us started. What inspired you to study anthropology or to get into anthropology?
For me, the journey was a bit chaotic. So I started studying philosophy actually during my BA. And I thought it was really great to sort of engage with all these systems of thoughts, but I wanted not to spend the rest of my life at the library, and I wanted to also sort of make a change, or at least try to make a change. So I wanted to try and apply those theories in the real world. And I thought anthropology was the great, option to do that, the great way to do that. And especially I always had a keen interest in how human beings interact with non-human animals. So I'm quite a strong animal advocate. And I thought it would be great to study a practice that has not been studied very much, that would sort of decrease the stereotypical representation of that practice, which would help the human population, but also sort of shed light on the lived experiences of the non-human populations involved. So anthropology was that way for me.
So I have actually been really fortunate in the fact that I've had the opportunity to travel around the world, and every country that I've gone to, I've really loved like exploring them and learning as much as I possibly could about all the people that live there and like the country itself. And when I was doing my A-levels, I found that anthropology fit really well. So I did geography, psychology, philosophy and ethics, and BTEC health and social care. So all of them kind of center around humanity and not only the effects that we have on the world, but the effects that the world has on us. So really, it kind of worked really well for me. And then when I attended open days up and down the country at loads of different universities, the more I learned about anthropology and what all of these universities were doing, the more that I wanted to study it. So for me, it kind of just fit really well.
I grew up in Hong Kong, and I come from a sort of a very mixed background. So I've always been interested in culture, different cultures, humans around the world, and just traveling and engaging with that, and being exposed to a wide variety of cultural diversity growing up in Hong Kong. But I only heard about anthropology by going to a university along with my brother to sort of do a university recce trip, and talking to one of the students there. They said they were doing law and anthropology, and later I asked my mum, what is anthropology? And she just turned to me and said, "Oh, that'll be perfect for you. You should apply for this." And that was not a very satisfactory answer. So I had to go look up what on earth anthropology was. And I realized that it really suited my interest in the world around me, that cultural exposure and that interest in humanity that I developed growing up. Anthropology just really spoke to me, and I've never looked back since.
So I ended up doing anthropology because I sort of chose my university and degree sort of the wrong way round. Usually people decide what degree they want to do and then start looking at universities that offer that degree and then choose their favourite. I was really indecisive and couldn't make up my mind about what course I wanted to do, to the point that I had to start going to open days without any idea of what course I was going to be doing. So I came to an open day at Exeter and just fell in love with the campus and completely felt like, yes, this is 100% where I want to be. So then it was a case of choosing which course I wanted to do. So I spent a lot of time going through Exeter's prospectus, looking at all the different courses. Eventually just completely stumbled across anthropology, and yeah, it just clicked that it was the perfect combination of what I was interested in, and yeah, just felt this is a course for me.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much. And you've all had such different pathways into anthropology. It's very interesting to hear. So Julian, I have a few questions for you. This is a bit of a general question. What is the study of anthropology?
Well, it's quite a complex question to answer, but I think you can look at it by sort of looking at the etymology of the term. So it's anthropos and logos. So logos means rationality, making sense of something, and anthropos is humankind. So it's about sort of making sense of humankind around you. So basically, I mean, traditionally, it's about studying human beings or human groups, societies and cultures. So human beings in their sort of natural habitat, so to speak. So it is, I kind of see this as the equivalent in the natural sciences of ethology or natural biology, which looks at animal behavior in their natural habitat. It's the same thing with human beings in their natural habitats, which is, you know, either sort of urban and rural environment, and in societies and cultures. So that's basically it. And looking at how they make sense of the world around them, and how they interact with other life forms, with social facts, social institutions. So that's what's great about anthropology. You can actually do anthropology of absolutely anything, because anything could be seen as a social fact. So yeah, so that's my answer.
And what kind of topics do students generally explore on an anthropology degree?
Well, I mean, as I just said, I think there's room for students to explore pretty much anything they want. There's a lot of modules where we sort of really encourage creative thinking and sort of innovation in terms of designing your own essay questions or the topics you want to explore. That's certainly what I try to do in my modules. So you could definitely sort of do anthropology of pretty much anything. There are some sort of great concepts that tend to come back, things like gender, kinship, political structure, religion, sound, visual representation, human-animal interactions, food. You know, those sort of very sort of traditional ways or windows into societies and cultures. But again, it's very sort of open. So yeah, you can explore many things.
I was just wondering, this is a common question that we get asked for, particularly from students who who are a bit unfamiliar with anthropology. And the question that often gets asked is, what is the difference between anthropology and sociology?
It's a good question. I remember asking myself and scratching my head over that question also at the very beginning of my studies. Well, the answer is that more and more these two disciplines are merging, but traditionally the difference is in the methodological approach to societies and cultures. So you have to remember that anthropology stems from sociology. So it's something that really sort of created itself and created its independence from sociology. So a lot of the methods are the same, but traditionally it's about really try to understand people in a very deep manner. So you go and live with a specific population that you're interested in for, say, you know, about a year. So you go through all the different seasons, you see, you know, this life circle that they go through. And that's this idea of fieldwork and participant observation. So you observe them, you observe their behaviors, and you try to see if there's any differences between what they do and what they say, so their behaviors and their discourses. So that's the traditional sort of very sort of core anthropological approach to societies and cultures. Now, sociology is doing that more and more, but perhaps not to the extent that anthropology is. And also there's a series of differences. I mean, depending on where you study anthropology, anthropology is using sort of very sort of wide array of methods which sociology isn't necessarily, which is So on top of this social approach, there's also a biological approach, so sort of an evolutionary theory approach to societies and cultures. In some degrees, you can also explore archaeology, so how populations and societies engage with the objects around them, material culture, and also linguistics. So a very sort of strong emphasis made on or placed on language, and how language is also a window to you know, how societies and cultures have formed, and how people have tried to understand the world around them. Lots of anthropologists, and certainly most of the anthropologists at Exeter have definitely learned a specific language to make sure that they have sort of first-hand information about the societies they explore. So yeah, that's the answer.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the department in which anthropology sits at the University of Exeter. I understand it's between sociology, philosophy and anthropology.
Yeah, absolutely, and criminology more and more. So there's definitely this, the synergies that I just explored between sociology and anthropology. We really value that. So we want to make sure that we underline those synergies, those similarities in our teaching. And you know, all our students have access to a lot of philosophy modules, sociology modules, anthropology, criminology modules. So there's really sort of wide array of options. I think that's really sort of the great thing about Exeter. There's just so many optional modules. There's definitely going to be you know, a lot of different sort of interests that you will find in sort of choosing those optional modules. We try to sort of highlight the synergies between those different disciplines, and we also do research across those disciplines. So yes, it's very much a department with many disciplines. It's definitely not something that is just anthropology.
Wonderful, and that leads on to a tie-in question, which is what modules do you teach at Exeter? And also carrying on from that, can you tell us more about your research interests and specialisms?
There's so many options you can take. There's something about sound and society, something about food ethics. There's something about health and well-being, something about addiction, sort of drugs and addictions, how that fits within sort of societies and cultures. What specifically I teach is human-animal interactions. So that's my sort of research expertise. And that explores sort of a wide array of contexts where sort of people sort of engage with non-human animals, which is basically sort of any context you can find. But also different sort of philosophical questions that arise from those interactions, sort of place of non-human animals, you know, within those societies, and do we have a responsibility towards them? I also teach other sort of core modules. So there's one module I really enjoy teaching, which is called Current Debates Practice. So that's the emphasis there is really sort of on practice, on sort of testing your debating skills with, you know, within a safe space with other students, presenting how you understand the readings, and really try to generate a debate and see, you know, how you can develop those skills, which are going to be extremely useful in the future. So in whichever sort of professional career you engage with, you're going to be, you know, using those skills. And so it's also about seeing what anthropology can do for society today. So it's about taking a wide range of very sort of topical sort of ideas and concepts, and see, you know, how we can use those to explain, you know, things like civil disobedience and activism, you know, pollution, and many other things. And yeah, so I think that's the two main modules I tend to teach, at least at undergraduate level. At graduate level, I teach, you know, something closer to my research interests. So primatology, the representation of animals in religion. I've taught in the past visual anthropology, animal representation. I supervise a lot of dissertations as well. So very wide range of modules.
Amazing, thank you. And lastly, why do you enjoy teaching and researching in the field of anthropology?
Well, research is really fun, especially, you know, for us anthropologists, we get to go places. So if you like to travel, like Kyra, and want to sort of get to know people's societies and really sort of look not only for sort of differences between the cultures, but also with the similarities between those cultures, that's really great. And it's also about sort of breaking down stereotypical representations of people, you know, that are sort of far away from your own society. So it's about saying, you know, look, you know, this stereotypical representation you have of these people, you know, that's not necessarily what goes on in practice. So that's really great about researching. It's really fun. It's also something that, you know, it lasts for quite a long time, because this immersion is a very sort of strong part of the anthropology discipline. So you really immerse yourself in those cultures, those populations, and that's you know, that's always fascinating to do. In terms of teaching, what I enjoy the most is when students really blossom into anthropologists. So a lot of students have come really scared to my modules because I really value tutorial participations and debates, and they get a bit sort of scared with that. But you can see that when they really sort of engage with it, they transform into anthropologists and transform into sort of very strong individuals who, with really good ideas, with also very respectful individuals who are ready to sort of change their points of view, transform who they are, and transform others. So that's yeah, that's probably the best part about teaching.
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks, Julian. I have a few questions for both Kyra and William. When you were both applying for your undergraduate degrees, William, I understand you did your undergraduate degree not at Exeter, is that correct?
Well, that's correct. So I studied at the University of Aberdeen.
Wonderful. Were both of you, when you were trying to decide what you wanted your undergraduate degree to be, were you torn between different subjects when thinking about UCAS applications, or was it very much, no, I want to do anthropology?
Well, so I had a huge interest in food. So the two subjects that I excelled at in secondary school in my A levels was food technology and philosophy and religious studies. And so I really ummed and ahed about whether or not I wanted to go down a bit more academic-y, bookish route of anthropology, or whether I wanted to go into culinary school or take a food, nutrition, food technology dynamic. And I think in the end, I realized that I could get more out of an anthropology degree than I could with specializing so much in food. And actually that decision's paid massive dividends for me, because anthropology is so flexible. During the course later on, I was able to specialize my knowledge in food and also go work in a kitchen to supplement my income for whilst I was an undergraduate as well.
So I actually originally wanted to study classics, and I actually took part in the Exeter Scholars Scheme. It used to be called Exeter Progression, and I did the classics strand, which meant that I got to come up to the University of Exeter over the course of a year, and then we also had an additional year where we had lots of help from the university in terms of like applications for UCAS and all those kind of things. And I kind of realised doing that I liked learning, doing it as a degree. So I very much fell into a pit of despair and had no idea what I wanted to do. I kind of like Lauren, I knew that I wanted to come to Exeter, so I kind of decided what uni I wanted to go to, but then I didn't really know what course. So I kind of like got the prospectus and I was like, oh my God, what can I do? What can I do? And literally the first one was anthropology. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And as I said earlier, it fit with all of my A levels. And when I came up on the open day and I got to speak to like the lecturers and go to like the sample taster sessions, all those kind of things, I just decided that, yeah, it was definitely what I wanted to do. But originally I did want to do classics. So yeah. Brilliant.
How did you find the transition from whether you did A level or IB or BTEC, whichever qualification you did? How did you find the transition from that to degree level?
Honestly, it wasn't that, I didn't really find it that hard. I would say that the first year of university is almost kind of like an introductory into undergraduate study. So a lot of the things that we learn is like how to reference and generally how to live away from home because for a lot of people you're living away from home for the first time. For anthropology, it kind of felt like we were learning the foundation, so we kind of learned the history, the founding fathers of anthropology, and then we were kind of introduced into, okay, what is anthropology doing today? I felt like there was pressure to do well, but not incredible amount of pressure. So it was kind of, they knew that we were learning. They knew that for a lot of us, this was the first time we were going to study anthropology. So I honestly didn't find it as nerve-wracking or as hard as I thought it was going to be, which was very, very reassuring.
William, what led you to choose the University of Exeter for your PhD, and what are you well, actually I was going to say what are you specialising in, but you've already mentioned that, but what led you to choose Exeter?
So when looking at a PhD, it's less about the university and more about your supervisor, because you are going it alone. So with your undergraduate degree or a taught master's degree, you have the expert in the room guiding you, providing the knowledge and your learning, processing and re-articulating that. For a PhD, it's very much you're on your own. It's now you've got all this information. How can you use that to contribute and further the knowledge of your chosen specialist subject? So choosing your supervisor is incredibly important to that degree, to make sure that they're compatible and they're able to facilitate your original thought and your original idea. I took a taught master's at a School of Oriental and African Studies in London, where I studied food anthropology. And during my master's, I wrote a dissertation about chili pepper culture. So I went and looked at chili pepper festivals that occurred all around the southern part of England and Wales, and just fell in love with what I was researching and realized there is so much depth here that it really needs to be unpacked further. And there aren't very many chili specialists or anthropologists who specialize in chilies. So I had to go for the next best thing, which was a specialist on cheese and an anthropologist of food, which was the professor in SOAS. He left on the year that I graduated and moved to Exeter. So I moved to Exeter, went to visit the campus, chatted to him about my ideas. And then he gave me a list of people that could really help me, from historians to other anthropologists to my current second supervisor, who is a philosopher of pain, to a geographer in the department. So I realized that my supervisor, first of all, I had a very good relationship and he could help me specializing my knowledge. But then the department itself and the university, the knowledge of the fellow colleagues and academics in the university was really second to none. And then lastly, visiting the campus, it's just a wonderful campus, but also the city. It's a city, but it's incredibly sort of rural as well. Like you just wander 30 minutes outside and you're basically in farmland, and another 20 minutes you're on Dartmoor. And that sort of confluence between urban and rural, access to really good quality food, it kind of just, as a whole package, just sold me to do my PhD here.
Thank you. And Kyra, similarly, you touched on it a little before, but what led you to choose Exeter?
So I was actually really lucky enough to visit the campus on a science trip in year 8. So we went to Reed Hall, which is like one of the oldest buildings on campus. And if you ever do get the chance to come to Exeter, definitely go and see Reed Hall. It's absolutely beautiful. And we got given a campus tour by one of the ambassadors, and I kind of just fell in love with like the campus itself. And when I came on open days and got to meet other people and meet the ambassadors and go and see the accommodation, it just kind of fit for me. It was kind of like the perfect match. I'm only an hour away from home, so I live in Cornwall. So I'm far enough away from home to have my own life at uni, but also close enough that if I do need to go home to see family or anything like that, it's just a 1 hour train away. I also loved like the like community and how close-knit the department felt every time I would come and visit. For instance, Julian was my lecturer for current debates and for human animal last year, and William's supervisor is my dissertation supervisor. So, you know, like it's all very close-knit, and you get to know the department, the lecturers, the students, everyone really, really well. So I think that kind of settled it for me and made me definitely want to come to Exeter.
Amazing. And what have been your favourite modules while studying anthropology?
Ooh, I've loved so many of them. I think the one thing that I love the most is the fact that we get to do so many untraditionally studied topics. So for instance, this year I'm doing a module in gardening. So every Wednesday for 2 hours I go out to our community garden and we just like plant bulbs. And last week we looked at soil samples, and I never thought studying soil would be interesting until I did it. We also do things like food studies and human animal relations, which I absolutely love. But my favourite to date has definitely been theory and methods of food preservation, because it's such a hands-on approach, and every 2 weeks or so we would get to go to different establishments around Devon. So we went to like a cider orchard, we went to a dairy farm, which meant I got to go and see baby calves, which was absolutely adorable. We also get to go to like the local community centre, and we get to take part in making different foods. So we made kimchi, and we learned about the importance of kimchi as part of Korean and Japanese culture. We also got to make like flatbreads and chutneys and all of those kind of things. So it's like really hands-on and a really great way of learning, as opposed to just reading literature or looking at other people's theories.
That sounds fantastic. What do you both most enjoy about studying anthropology?
I think essentially it's just like opening yourself up to the complexity of the complexity and creativity of humanity, really. Like Kyra was saying, that you end up learning such interesting, diverse modules and courses that you didn't think, you know, you wouldn't even think about. I remember in Aberdeen, I studied a course on roads, which I initially thought would be it's a bit dry, a bit boring. Most amazing thing I ever studied. We learnt about an anthropologist in Mozambique who pointed out that there was a brand new road built, and he went, "Oh, that's a really fantastic new road you've got there." And every single local said, "There is no road here." And he was initially there to go study witchcraft, and then suddenly just dropped that and went, "What on earth's going on?" And ended up with an amazing ethnography about transnational globalization occurring between Africa and China. I also learned on that course about how teenagers in Yakutsk, Siberia, Russia, and they watched the Fast and Furious 3, realized that they could buy those cars in Vladivostok for very cheap. So they did, because there's not much to do in Yakutsk, and they set up a boy racing culture in the middle of Siberia. And I think you're only ever going to really learn these things and learn about the world in such a creative, mad way. Only anthropology can really do that for you.
Yeah, in the same strand as William, there's just so much to study. Like if you have any interest at all, you can definitely study it as part of anthropology. I remember in first year we looked at someone's ethnography into flip-flops. So we were looking at how flip-flops are made, and then where does it go from there. So it comes to like a first world countries like England, and then when we chuck them away, where do they go? They end up in a rubbish dump, and then they might get picked up. And like it's the journey of a flip-flop. And realistically, you're like, why on earth am I studying this? And also, why am I finding this so interesting? And why am I going home and looking at flip-flops? Like, and it's just all of those kind of journeys that you take with anthropology that I absolutely love about it.
I would also add to that as well. I remember also researching being taught something very similar, but where it was a street in London, and it was just an ethnography and a research of one street, and it's changed how I now walk through a city. And how I look at the shop fronts and what's going on, and it really like immerses you in the world around you, even, you know, in your local community as much as traveling around the world does.
It definitely makes you reevaluate just your life as well. So you look at like loads of different theories and different cultures and practices, and then you kind of look at yourself and go, do I do that? Do I take part in these kind of rituals, like gifting rituals and all those kind of things? So you really do become very self-reflective as well as externally reflective, which is quite cool.
Fantastic, thank you. this is technically a question that anybody on the panel can answer. So you're all welcome to jump in. Which is, what opportunities are there for getting more involved in anthropology at university? So are there societies? Can you do work experience, or placements, field trips, studying abroad?
I like for undergraduate students to have sort of a hands-on experience of ethnography, sort of alongside established anthropologists. So I tend to sort of try and recruit undergraduates to do some research for me, to do some interviews, follow-up interviews, come with me to do some participant observations. So and there's also lots of ways to get that funded. So it's really good, because every year you give that great opportunity to a student. And it doesn't have to be a student you like, or someone that you really sort of target, someone who has some interest in what you want to do. And it's always fascinating for me to see students blossom into really engaging with sort of social facts, social interactions, making sense of it, and really enjoying research, and sort of want to perhaps sort of pursue that in a postgraduate level. So yeah, that's one opportunity.
We also have our SACSOC Society. So SACSOC stands for Sociology, Anthropology and Criminology Society. And they do events throughout the entire year. So like quiz nights and pizza nights. We also have like an annual winter and summer ball. So it's a really great opportunity to meet other students as well as lecturers throughout the 3 different subjects. One of the best events that I've been to was called SPAM. So it was like a lecture panel event. So the lecturers have the challenge, and they have to like defend these most outlandish views, and it's a really fun event because you get to have some drinks and some food and just have a little laugh, which is quite fun. We also have loads of opportunities given to us to attend like lectures by visiting professionals or lecturers. We get to attend events at like local museums. So I know that last year there was a museum event for food, and I think Kawa, who is one of our lecturers, and Harry, who is my supervisor for my dissertation, was part of that. So it's like a really great opportunity of seeing anthropology in the everyday. We also have a module called Ethnography Now and Into the Field, and we actually get to do our own mini research. So we get to go out and take interviews or do participant observation as part of our course, which is a really hands-on way of actually seeing what it's like to be an anthropologist around the university, which is pretty cool.
Those opportunities sound brilliant, sound really brilliant. So lastly, Kyra, what would you like to do after you finish your degree?
So when I have finished, hopefully I'll be staying on at Exeter, and I'll be doing a PGC in primary education. And then after that, I might potentially do my master's in food studies, so similar to William. But we shall see, because I might just end up going into primary school teaching, because that's been the dream, the lifelong dream, is to go into teaching.
Wonderful. And William, do you have post-PhD plans, or are you just in the moment?
So I'm still very much in the moment, I'm a bit torn. So I'm interested in taking my research further into postdoctorate, but move it from Britain into Bhutan and look at Bhutanese chili culture and Buddhism there. But then also I've had other opportunities working with plant and seed producers, and also working through with social media and technological firms in marketing, but also in the realm of AI. And looking at that as my research, even though it's all about chilies, it ties into all of this and makes me an applicable candidate in that area. So I'm still pretty much torn. I'm still not really sure, but there's a lot of different opportunities, let alone whether or not I should set up my own chili company out of my little apartment.
Brilliant. Thank you both so much. So this leads very fittingly to our alumni speaker, Lauren. Thank you, Lauren. So we were speaking about this a little bit earlier on, but what led you to choose the University of Exeter? And also likewise, were you torn between any subjects before deciding what to study?
Yeah, so I chose University of Exeter, as I sort of touched on earlier, because I came to an open day and just fell in love with it. As others have already said, the campus itself is just beautiful. There's so much greenery that you could never tell that you're in the middle of a city, really. In some parts of the campus, there's like woodland and all sorts. And I like the fact as well that it's a campus university rather than like a sort of city centre based university. But unlike most other campus unis, it's still walking distance to the city centre, and everything you could possibly need is within reaching distance. I never once needed to get a bus when I was at Exeter, because everywhere I needed to go I could walk to, which I really loved about it. And yeah, it just really struck me how friendly and approachable everyone was when I came to the open day. So not just the people that were giving talks about anthropology and student life, and the student ambassadors who were there, like Kira and William, but just the students in general. As I was sort of walking around the campus, having a look around, multiple people who were just on their way to their lecture stopped to ask me if I needed directions or if there was anything they could help with at all. So overall, it was just a really welcoming, approachable, friendly vibe that just really contrasted with some of the other universities that I'd visited, where I just didn't get that sort of warmth at all. And so, yeah, that just made me feel 100%, yeah, this is where I want to be. And sort of as William touched on a bit earlier, Exeter City is beautiful as well. I can't count the number of times that I've had a picnic on the Cathedral Green in the sunshine. And yeah, you've got Dartmoor and loads of beautiful beaches right on your doorstep.
Thank you. And yes, as we're I think again we touched on this a little earlier, but were you torn between subjects, or were you sure it was anthropology that you wanted to do?
As soon as I discovered anthropology, I knew it was definitely the one. Until I sort of found it in the Exeter prospectus, I'd never heard of anthropology before. Like a lot of people, I think, but as soon as I found it and did a bit of reading about it, no, I didn't have any kind of, my mind was made up.
Great. When you were studying anthropology, did you have any favourite modules?
Yeah, so as everyone else has said, it's quite hard to choose a favourite just because there's so many different amazing topics, and also different and also interesting in their own different rights. But I think if I had to choose, my favourites were the addiction module I found really interesting, and also, I'm not sure if they're still running, but when I was at Exeter, there were 2 modules about health and bodies. So it was like Health and Bodies 1 and Health and Bodies 2, so it spanned over 2 terms. Found that really interesting, so much so that I ended up doing my dissertation about smoking behaviour, which kind of tied into both of those areas. And subsequently, I've ended up, both of the charities that I've worked at since graduating have been medical research charities, which is probably no coincidence that seems to be where my interests lie. So yeah, they were definitely my favourite. But as I said, all of them were fascinating in their own different ways.
Can you tell us, that leads very well into this, can you tell us about your career journey since graduating?
Yeah, so when I was at university, I was really involved. Well, first of all, I was involved in the SAC Society, which Kira has mentioned. I got involved in that in my first year, and then held committee positions in my second and third year. But as well as that, I was also heavily involved in RAG, which is the Raise and Give Society, which is a society on campus that does lots of events and various different things to raise money for charities. So if going into the charity sector is something that you're interested in, that's a really amazing way to get experience in that kind of area. So then as a result of that experience, when I graduated, I got a job at a charity called Meningitis Research Foundation, coordinating their student fundraising programme. So they partner with lots of universities all over the country, including Exeter, with the sort of RAGs who do fundraising to raise money for the cause. So I was the member of staff that kind of coordinated all of that, got to go and visit lots of universities, which is great, got to pretend I was still a student for a little bit longer. Networking and an SU is the best way to do your networking. So I did that for about a year and a half, and then I got promoted to a different role at the charity where I coordinated the national events portfolio, which basically meant that I looked after all the people who were fundraising for us by running the London Marathon, New York Marathon, Great North Run, all those kind of sort of events. And I did that again for about a year and a half. And then earlier this year, in the middle of lockdown, I moved to a different charity called Blood Cancer UK, formerly known as Bloodwise, until earlier this year. And sort of made the move away from working on like the fundraising side of things to now working in marketing and communications. So my job title is External Communications Officer, and I primarily run the charity's various social media channels and create and share content and engage with our audience via social media. But I also help with writing press releases, liaising with journalists to try and get as press coverage, writing e-newsletters, and writing blogs for the website and all sorts of bits and pieces like that.
What do you enjoy most about your current role?
It's hard to choose just one thing. I guess ultimately my favorite thing about my job and all the jobs I've had since graduating is the fact that working for a charity, at the end of every day, even if you've had quite a long, difficult, stressful day, you get to come home and think, I've put some good into the world. I've made some kind of difference, rather than, not that obviously there's anything wrong with working for like a big corporation, but for me personally, I don't think I'd get the same satisfaction coming home and being like, oh, I've had a really stressful day, but you know, I've put some money in some bloke's pocket. Doesn't quite make it rewarding in quite the same way. So yeah, for me, that's why working for a charity is so great.
How did your degree prepare you for the career path that you took?
So I think studying anthropology has really helped my career, because it means I have an understanding, as we've sort of discussed already, I have an understanding of such a broad range of really, really different topics that are applicable to pretty much every type of charity that's out there. So like I've applied for a lot of different jobs at a lot of different charities since graduating, and I've always had relevant knowledge from my degree that I can talk about in an interview or on a job application. So for example, I've applied for jobs at like a women's rights charity and been able to talk about what I'd learned in the gender and society module, and the health and bodies modules, obviously really relevant for my current and previous roles at medical research charities. So if you are interested in going into the charity sector, then studying anthropology will definitely help to give you a clear understanding of which particular type of cause you might be the most interested in working in. And it will definitely give you a better understanding of the actual cause and how that relates to society and people, more so than some other applicants who haven't studied a subject like this might not have.
Thanks, Lauren. And lastly, when you think back on your time at the University of Exeter, what stands out most strongly? And also, what did you enjoy most about studying anthropology?
So the thing that stands out most strongly for me is a trip that I got to go in first year. It was a really amazing trip where you go and stay at a multi-faith ashram in Wales, and they have like an elephant there, and it's all a bit random but amazing. So you stay there for 5 days, I think, and you have to get up at 5 a.m. every morning for the first puja of the day, which is like prayer, worship ceremony, and you fully live alongside the monks there and adopt their way of life, and it's just a really incredible experience, and like nothing else that, and nowhere else that I've ever been before. So that definitely stands out as a highlight for me. I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question? I've forgotten.
Oh, that's all right. What did you enjoy most about studying anthropology?
Yeah, as others I feel like I'm just repeating everything that everyone else has already said, but I think what I enjoyed most is that, as we've said, you cover such a broad range of different subjects and some really topical issues. Like, I remember in one of my very first lectures in first year, we talked about like female genital mutilation and like really topical and important issues. That it means that I never felt bored studying anthropology. I had some friends at uni who did other subjects who complained about the content being dry or sometimes a bit repetitive at times. And I just never ever had that with anthropology. I'd always come away from lectures and seminars feeling like I'd learnt something really different and really important. And as Kira said, find myself looking up flip-flops and all sorts of really weird and wonderful things. So yeah, my favourite thing about anthropology is that you'll never be bored, you'll never have a boring day.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So the following questions are going out to all of our panelists. So the first question being, what useful skills and attributes do anthropology students achieve or develop?
I would say for me, the three biggest ones is analytical, communication, and time organization. Like, those are the big three for me. So a lot of our course involves like debate-based learning, like Julian said earlier. So we have like set readings for the week, and then we come together in a seminar, so like a small group of people, and we think about them logically, we discuss them, we express our own opinions of them, and what arguments can we draw from them. And then we will go back and write essays or do exams based on those readings and other readings that we have read, in terms of like just our general independent learning. And then arguably, I would say time organization at the university level is just absolutely vital. For instance, this week alone, I've worked 4 days back to back whilst writing a dissertation plan and an essay, and also prepping for all of my timetables, seminars and lectures. And if I didn't have a planner, if I didn't have everything organized and managed, I would be drowning right now, essentially. So I'd definitely say those are the three most important for me.
I think for me, one of the key things I felt that I've gained from doing anthropology is that, as I've sort of just said, you talk about some really topical and really important issues that, as a result of studying anthropology, I feel like I question my own beliefs and preconceptions a lot more, and sort of ask myself, why do I think that? Why do I feel that way? And I think it just means that you end up becoming a much more empathetic and culturally aware person, which, especially at the moment, is becoming, thankfully, more and more important within society and also to employers. So if that's something that you can really demonstrate in a job interview, then that will definitely help you to go far.
To add to both Kyra and Lauren's point, like, analytical, being very analytical, communication, and compassion, empathy. But I think as well as that, I think it also gives you a very balanced view of the world, where, like Kyra was saying in your tutorials and seminars, there is no real answer. It's really sort of opinion and using evidence to help support and further your answer and your knowledge. So it makes you far more aware of where people's positions come from, and much more understanding of that, to sort of add to that level of compassion. And also, I think when you come to do your research, especially, I found when I was doing my ethnographic research in my undergraduate and my postgraduate, and now, there's a huge amount of creativity involved, a huge amount of reflexivity in understanding your role as a researcher, what you're researching and why, and being really sort of creative in trying to get the most out of that experience.
I think these are fantastic answers, and there's very little to follow up on that. I really enjoyed actually listening to the previous students, understanding what anthropology has done for them. I think it's really fantastic. The only thing I could perhaps add is that it also really sort of makes you understand why people do the things they do, and why there is a difference between what they say about themselves and what they say they're going to do, and then what they do in practice. And I think that's something that is very useful for two areas which are, recruiting quite a lot nowadays, which is, on the one hand, it's conservation and sustainability, and on the other hand, it's actually business and marketing. So in terms of conservation and sustainability, I mean, the more, we've seen this with the current pandemic, there's just an urgent need for anthropologists to help natural scientists to understand and explain how people engage with their environments and other life forms, and how they transform the world around them, and why, and what conceptions of nature they might have, and how this could either be sustained or changed in a more sustainable manner. So I think that's extremely important. So a lot of conservationists are working hand in hand with anthropologists nowadays because of that. And on the other hand, if that's not for you, and you want to work in business or something more lucrative, etc., market research is actually a great place to get recruited as an anthropologist, because it also is where anthropologists can tell firms or corporations, or it doesn't have to be sort of big corporations, any form of business, can help them understand why people make the choices they make, and why they go for a specific product, and what attracts them towards a specific product or towards a specific form of consumption. So I think that's quite a key skill also to develop as an anthropologist.
Thank you all so much, and to those of you who are watching this as well. I mean, what our panelists were saying included all the potential skills and attributes that you can develop through an anthropology degree. And of course, something we get asked about very often is what kind of career can anthropology students go into. And I think we found from this conversation that we've just had that there are many pathways that anthropology students can go down. It just depends on what it is that you want to do. I mean, some do become anthropologists, such as academics or researchers, but some go into careers that build a bit more on anthropology, such as social policy or teaching, overseas or development, overseas agencies or development, non-governmental organizations. Some work in the public, some work in not-for-profit sectors, civil service, government, charities, universities, international organizations like the United Nations, or in museums or voluntary organizations. Some work in advertising, conservation, health and social work, heritage, sales and marketing. So many possibilities and opportunities. And from Exeter specifically, some recent example alumni jobs include a project manager, an English teacher, a global HR assistant working in PR. Another former student is a social worker, a research and impact analyst, or a user research intern. These are just a handful of examples of many directions that a lot of our past students have gone down. So basically, there's many opportunities of different sectors to go into. So what advice would you give for anyone who is considering studying anthropology? This is out to all panelists.
My advice would be that if you think it sounds like an interesting subject for you, if anthropology meets up with your main interests, then go for it. Even if you haven't studied anthropology before, even if you don't know that much about the ins and outs and the history of it, go for it. As Kira sort of said earlier, the first year is very much about like laying that foundation and teaching you the fundamentals. So don't feel like, oh, I've never studied anthropology before, I don't know that much about it, so I can't do it as a degree. I didn't know a thing about it until, as I've said, I stumbled across it in a prospectus. So yeah, don't let that put you off if you think it's something that you're going to find interesting.
I would just say, as cliche as it sounds, kind of just enjoy the now. I find that, so as I said earlier, it can become very self-reflective, and I find that a lot of the things that I love about anthropology and a lot of the theories and arguments I then apply to myself, and I find that in those moments, it's the things that I'm thinking about and applying it to the times when I've actually just taken a moment to pause, enjoy life, and in that way I can reflect and incorporate it into my studies that I do now. So just definitely take each day as it comes and try not to overthink everything, I think is like the best advice I can give just in general in terms of applying for university or going into any kind of other career option or anything like that.
I really love that answer, and it really feeds into, I think, from a lecturer's perspective, the main advice I would give to students who want to study anthropology is be ready not to care so much about being a student and focus on the wrong things, which would be, caring too much about your grades, for example. It's really sort of about getting to know so many different things, enjoying the knowledge, and seeing how that's going to transform you and perhaps transform the people that you're going to engage with on a daily basis during and after the degree. So yeah, so that would be the advice.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of nailed it. I think the only other thing to really add is just be inquisitive. If you're interested in the world around you, from whatever your position or interests are, then anthropology is for you. Just as simple as that. There is no real there's no real specific subjects to that are specifically anthropological, because everything really can be or switched and turned into. So as long as you're interested in the world around you, you're willing to engage with it, to be reflective of that experience, whether it's sort of going on holiday, halfway across the world, or going down a street and going to the shops. If you find sort of interest and beauty in that, then anthropology is just do it. Simple as that.
Okay, so the final question is, why study anthropology?
Basically, I think there is no degree like it. Nothing comes close. I think Gillian was talking earlier about, what's the difference between sociology and anthropology, but actually it's apples and pears. But anthropology, the way I look at it as a food anthropologist, anthropology is the seasoning of academia. It's so flexible and integrates everywhere. It straddles science and the humanities. And essentially we take concepts from, it's diverse. I learned about the relativity, Einstein's theory of general relativity, through anthropology. You can learn about gardening, as we were saying earlier, to architecture. We take other academic areas and then we zhuzh it up, we improve, we season, we have the salt and pepper or the chili for me, and make it interesting and make it relative to the world around us in ways that is beyond the superficial. Like we peel back the layers and sort of really get at the heart of what other subjects are trying to articulate and talk about. And then that's just let alone all the weird, fascinating and interesting things that you'll study, and just learning about other people, and everyone's experience is unique and is invaluable in this degree. There's just nothing like it at all.
Can I just say that I love the fact that you refer to anthropology as the seasoning? I'm definitely going to be using that the next time someone asks me about what anthropology is. But no, I would definitely say that basically touching on what we've all said throughout is doing anthropology as a degree, it just lets you study everything. If you're interested in humanity, if you're interested in our effect on the world, how the world affects us, different cultures, what one person might think about this and what another person might think about it, if you're interested in any of those kind of things, you're really going to enjoy anthropology as a subject. So I would highly recommend it for anyone that is interested in studying humanity as a whole, really.
Anthropology is always a talking point. You'll always have something to talk about, in whether it's talking to friends and family about your degree, or if it's in the context of a job interview. It'll always make people perk up a little bit and grab their attention.
I really love everybody's answers. It's really enlightening for me as well. So I think, it's studying anthropology should be studied. It should be studied because it transforms you and it gives you the instruments and the tools to transform people as well. That is, a great discipline through which you can understand, people. And that is something so valuable in this day and age, when you can actually sort of break down stereotypical representations for yourself, but also for others. As Lauren just said, it's a point of it's a window into sort of starting a conversation and reducing stereotypes and sort of propagating an understanding. And it's in one term, well, in one paraphrase, it really sort of contributes to peace. And I think it's a fabulous discipline to get acquainted with. So I would, yeah, highly recommend it.
Julian, as you've said, I've loved all of your answers. It's been absolutely lovely listening to all of you speak about anthropology, and thank you all so much for taking the time to speak as a panel. You've all been fantastic panelists. Thank you so much. To those of you who are watching this, thank you for joining us. And if you would like to find out more about anthropology at the University of Exeter, please visit our website, which we will put at the end, all the details there. But otherwise, thank you all. Thank you to every panelist. You've all been fantastic. Thank you. And goodbye for now. Take care.